The ball slammed into Isaiah's chest like a warning shot, legal yes, but meant to rattle him. He didn't flinch. He just stepped back, reset his stance, and stared down the net as if to say, "You're going to have to do better than that." Hi, everyone. Today we're stepping into a story about quiet strength, earned respect, and the kind of justice that doesn't need a gavel to echo. It starts in the heat of a southern summer, but not in a courtroom. Instead, it takes place on a tennis court. Not the kind you see at the US Open. No flashing cameras, no polished interviews, just clay, sweat, and silence. But when two brothers from Baton Rouge showed up with a single duffel bag and duct-taped racket handles, no one at Cedar Pines Tennis Academy had any idea what was coming. They were laughed at, whispered about, pushed to the edge of the group because the truth is, some people still believe excellence wears a certain face, speaks with a certain tone, and drives a certain car. But by the end of this story, those same people wouldn't be laughing, because the twins didn't come to prove anyone wrong. They came to prove themselves right. This could happen to anyone, even you. So before we dive into the story, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is right now. All right, here we go. The sun had just broken over the pine trees when the old Ford F-150 rolled through the gates of Cedar Pines Tennis Academy. The tires crunched on the gravel like it knew this ground wasn't familiar. The paint on the truck had faded years ago. The back seat was full of Gatorade bottles, folded towels, and a tennis bag held together with more hope than stitching. Inside sat Anthony Thompson, a broad-shouldered man with calloused hands and eyes that didn't miss a thing. Next to him, his son's 15-year-old twins, Malik and Isaiah, watched the main campus come into view. Isaiah leaned forward. "Dang, that building's bigger than our whole school." Malik didn't answer. He kept his hood up, not because it was cold, but because it was easier. Easier not to see the way folks looked when they didn't expect you to walk into their world. Their father pulled into a line of spotless black SUVs, tapped the steering wheel twice, and said, "All right, you boys ready?" Neither one said yes, but they grabbed their bag and stepped out anyway. The air smelled like sunscreen and fresh-cut grass. The tennis courts, just visible through the trees, gleamed with carefully brushed clay. Every corner of the place looked like someone ironed it. Too neat, too perfect, too watched. A woman in white tennis gear checked them in at the welcome tent. Her smile was wide, her eyes not quite as warm. "The Thompsons, Wright, Malik, and Isaiah. You'll be in dorm C, lower level. Bunk assignments are first come, first served." Her gaze flicked to their sneakers, scuffed, stretched, and clearly secondhand. Anthony handed over a slim folder. "Here's everything. Tournament records, rankings, medical forms, and their school recs." She nodded. "Good. It's rare we get siblings this young in the same draw." Malik almost asked what that meant. Isaiah gave him a look. "Not now." They were handed lanyards, a folded map, and a rule book thick enough to serve as a doorstop. As they left the tent, a tall boy in a branded visor passed them, laughing with two others. His steps didn't pause, but his eyes lingered. A whisper followed scholarship kids. Isaiah caught it. So did Malik. Their dad didn't even blink. He slung their bag over one shoulder and kept walking. "Keep your heads up," Anthony said, voice calm. "Ain't nobody here better than you. Not where it counts." Their dorm room was basic: 2 bunk beds, a shared closet, no frills. The air was cold, the kind that made your skin itch from being over-air conditioned. They each claimed a bed and unpacked what little they had. A few changes of clothes, a roll of grip tape, 2 rackets. That was it. They sat for a while in silence. Then Malik said, "Feels like we ain't supposed to be here." Isaiah leaned back against the wall. "Maybe that's why we are." By late afternoon, the courts were alive with sound. Tennis balls thudding against strings. Coaches barking names. Players grunting through forehands like every shot was personal. The twins stepped onto an open practice court. No one offered to hit with them. That was fine. They warmed up on their own. Quiet, focused. Their movement wasn't flashy, but it was precise. Controlled. 2 players who didn't have to talk to be in rhythm. From the sidelines, Coach Martin Reddick watched them. A tall, salt and pepper man with a clipboard under one arm and a whistle he rarely used. He didn't say anything. Just watched. Across the court, the Aldridge siblings arrived. Brennan, tall and broad, with a golden forehand and louder mouth. Savannah shorter but sharp eyes, always scanning, always judging. They didn't notice the Thompsons at first, but they noticed when Coach Reddick spent more than a minute watching them. In the cafeteria that evening, the air smelled like oven-baked chicken and something trying too hard to be healthy. The boys sat alone. Around them, kids in brand-name gear talked about private coaches, European tournaments, and future sponsorships. As Isaiah chewed a piece of dry cornbread, Brennan passed their table smirking. "Nice shoes," he muttered. "Goodwill's finest." Malik didn't respond, but Isaiah looked up slow and steady. "You always talk that loud or just when people can't answer back." Savannah slid in beside her brother. "We're just saying, hey, don't be so defensive." "No," Malik said. "You're just saying what you think we're worth." The siblings walked away, but the tension stayed. Back at the dorm, Anthony called to check in. The boys kept it short, said they were fine, that they were settling in. But as they hung up, Malik finally said it out loud. "They're waiting for us to mess up." "Then we don't," Isaiah replied. And just like that, it began. The first full day at Cedar Pines began not with a sunrise, but with a whistle. A sharp silver scream outside dorm C cut through the morning stillness like a blade. Isaiah sat up first, blinking at the clock. 6:00 a.m. Malik groaned under his breath, already reaching for the camp-issued uniform folded at the foot of his bed. They got dressed in silence, navy blue shirts with the Cedar Pines logo, plain white short socks pulled too high, and sneakers that had already seen better years. The clothes didn't fit quite right. A little too tight at the shoulders, a little too loose at the waist. But they didn't complain. Out on the courts, kids were already stretching some jogging in circles like they were being filmed. Savannah Aldridge walked by with a bounce in her step and a brand new visor angled perfectly over her eyes. Brennan followed behind her, all confidence and ease, swinging his racket casually like it weighed nothing. The twins found an open court. No one said anything. No one asked to join. They started their warm-up quietly, short court shots, smooth volleys, light footwork drills. Everything they did had rhythm. No wasted motion, no flair, just control. From the sidelines, Coach Reddick watched again. He stood alone, arms crossed. A clipboard rested against his hip, but he didn't look at it. He didn't need to. He was studying something you couldn't measure with stats. Later that morning, the twins joined the rest of the players for court drills. Coaches called out names, assigning rotations. Malik and Isaiah were placed in separate groups, an intentional split to see how they performed independently. No one paired with them voluntarily, so the coaches made the matchups. Isaiah ended up with a lanky, quiet kid named Julian from Seattle. They didn't speak much, but Julian didn't treat him like an outsider. That was enough. Malik got paired with a kid who clearly didn't want to be there. A flashy player named Trevor who rolled his eyes every time Malik hit a clean shot and muttered, "Guess street tennis teaches angles." Malik ignored him. In the cafeteria at lunch, things didn't get better. They sat at the edge of a long table trying to eat quickly just to get through it. Brennan and Savannah sat center stage with their crew trading stories about past tournaments, sponsors, and how certain people were ruining the camp's tone. "You'd think they'd at least bring real gear," Savannah said just loud enough. Brennan chuckled. "I mean, if you're going to cosplay as athletes, at least commit." Coach Reddick walked by at that moment. He heard it. He paused, didn't say a word, but his eyes rested on them longer than usual. That evening, Malik and Isaiah returned to their practice court, alone again. They ran footwork drills until the sun dipped below the trees. Cones recoveries, split steps, shadow swings. They ran doubles patterns against the wall, tossed each other lobs, practiced drop shots in silence. Everything sharp, everything deliberate. They weren't there to impress anyone. They were there to get better, and people began noticing. Julian passed by and gave Isaiah a quiet nod. A girl named Camille from Florida stopped near the fence and watched for a few minutes before heading back inside. Even one of the assistant coaches, a young woman named Coach Delgado, paused while gathering cones. "You boys been training long together since we could walk," Isaiah replied. "I can tell." The next day, the tournament draw went up on the bulletin board outside the main hall. A crowd gathered like bees on honey. Names were called out, brackets were filled in. Murmurs started early. "Wait, look at that." "No way. Oh, this is gonna be fast." Isaiah and Malik pushed through the crowd and found their names. Team 7, Malik Thompson and Isaiah Thompson. First round match, Team 4, Brennan and Savannah Aldridge. Malik blinked. Isaiah looked at him slow and steady. Well, Malik said they wanted to see what we can do. They're about to, Isaiah answered. By the time the first match day arrived, the whole camp was buzzing. Nobody said it out loud, but everyone expected a blowout. The Aldridges were camp royalty. They came from money, legacy, and connections. Malik and Isaiah were still treated like charity projects with duct-taped grips and borrowed respect. The match was set for court 2. Shade tents lined the sides. A few parents had even pulled up folding chairs. Phones hovered discreetly ready to record. Not because anyone expected greatness, but because they expected a train wreck. The boys warmed up in silence. The Aldridges strutted onto the court like it was theirs by birthright. Coach Reddick stood at the back fence, arms folded. First serve, Savannah to Isaiah. She served flat and wide, fast but predictable. Isaiah Reddick stepped in and returned deep cross-court. The ball clipped the line. 15-love. Brennan raised an eyebrow. Second serve. Malik took it on the rise and lobbed it over both Aldridges. Savannah scrambled, Brennan misread it, and the ball dropped behind him. 30-love. Murmurs started. By the end of the first game, the Twins had broken serve. By the end of the third, they were up 3-0. Brennan slammed his racket into the fence. Savannah whispered something sharp. They argued at the changeover. Meanwhile, the Thompsons barely spoke. Their communication was in the way Malik adjusted his stance, in how Isaiah nodded once before shifting court position, in how neither of them smiled or gloated. Every shot said the same thing: we're not here for your comfort. The set ended 6-2. The crowd, once waiting for disaster, was now leaning forward. The second set was tighter. Brennan found his rhythm for a while. Savannah landed a few clean forehands, but they couldn't keep it consistent. Isaiah hit a backhand pass that curved inside the line so tightly, even the line judge flinched. Malik followed it up with a drop shot that caught Savannah mid-stride. At 5-4 match point, Malik served wide. Brennan returned low. Isaiah charged the net, angled a sharp volley cross-court, and it was over. 6-2, 6-4. Match to the Thompsons. They didn't cheer. They just walked to the net, offered their hands. Brennan took it briefly. Savannah looked away. The camp didn't erupt. It paused, because no one knew what to say. But Coach Reddick did. He approached them slowly, nodding once. Good match. Clean. Focused. You boys don't waste time. No reason to, Isaiah said. Reddick hesitated, then added, keep doing what you're doing. And just like that, everything shifted. That night, the camp cafeteria felt different. Not louder, just less certain. The Aldridges were still at their usual table, but they weren't holding court the way they had the day before. Savannah kept her head down, poking at her salad like it owed her something. Brennan scrolled his phone without looking up. Malik and Isaiah sat near the back, same spot as always. They weren't surrounded by new friends or sudden admirers, but something had shifted. The stares they got now weren't curious or mocking. They were curious and measuring. Julian passed by on the way to the dessert table and gave a quiet nod. Isaiah nodded back. One of the assistant coaches, Coach Delgado, paused near the drink machine and said, "You two make court coverage look easy." "We've had practice," Malik replied. She smiled. "I can tell." Back in the dorm that night, a note was taped to their door. Folded, anonymous. Just 2 words in blocky handwriting. Lucky win. Isaiah peeled it off, read it once, and dropped it in the trash. "Guess they're taking it well," Malik said, voice flat. "They'll get over it," Isaiah muttered. The next morning, the camp bulletin board showed the updated tournament brackets. The Thompsons had moved to the quarterfinals. Their next opponents, a pair from New York. Tall, athletic, all smiles and matching warm-ups. They didn't talk trash. They didn't need to. They assumed they'd win. But the match didn't go as expected. Malik and Isaiah didn't dominate, they dissected. Slow, methodical, mistake-free. They ran the court like chess players, always a shot ahead. Their returns came low, their footwork stayed sharp, and their teamwork was something else entirely. By the end of the first set, the New York pair looked winded. Not from running, but from chasing a rhythm they couldn't match. The Twins took it 6-3, then 6-2. No celebration. Just a nod between them and a quiet walk to the bench. From the bleachers, Coach Reddick watched. He didn't smile, but he stood up. Back at the dorms, another note was waiting. This time typed. Clean. No smears or smudges. You won't last. Isaiah slid it into his backpack. Not because it mattered, but because reminders have a place. Someone's really spending time on us, Malik said. Good, Isaiah replied. Means we're in their head. The semifinals were set for Saturday. The Thompsons would play against two of the top seeds, Jay Park and Leo Castellano, ranked juniors with fast hands and fast tempers. The match drew a crowd. Campers who hadn't watched any other match showed up early. Phones came out again. Whispers carried, let's see how far Lucky gets them now. This time the twins came prepared for the noise. Warm-up was quiet, purposeful. The sky hung heavy with clouds, but the air was dry. Malik tapped out his split steps. Isaiah adjusted his grip. They didn't look around. Coach Reddick stood by the far fence alone. But his arms weren't crossed today. His hands rested at his sides open. The first set was brutal. Park and Castellano came in aggressive. Serve and volley play. Hard slices. Cross-court darts that forced the twins into wide swings. But they didn't break. Instead, they bent just enough to stay alive, then pounced. A deep forehand from Isaiah opened the first break point. Malik followed it with a backhand lob that landed just inside the line. The crowd didn't erupt. It inhaled. The set went to 5-5, then 6-5, then a tie break. The twins played it point by point. No panic, no power hitting. Just precision. They won it 7-4. The second set began with momentum fully theirs. Castellano double-faulted early. Park started grunting louder after each point. Frustration, not focus. At 4-2, Malik served down the tee. Isaiah closed in on the net and knocked a volley past both players. Another break. 5-2. And then match point. Castellano swung too hard. The ball clipped the tape and fell dead. Game. Set. Match. The twins didn't raise their fists. They didn't jump. They just looked at each other, nodded once, and walked to the net. Their opponents shook hands stiffly. No words. Coach Reddick met them at the gate. This time he smiled. You two make the courts smaller, he said. For everyone else. Malik shrugged. We've always played that way. Yeah, well, some people just realized it. That evening in the cafeteria, the mood was different again. It wasn't warm exactly, but it was respectful. A boy from Miami offered Malik an extra seat at his table. A girl from Phoenix complimented Isaiah's cross-court placement. Even Julian, still soft-spoken, whispered, "You guys are in the zone." The Aldridges, they kept their distance. Savannah hadn't said a word since their match. Brennan still glared, but even that had lost its edge. Before lights out, another note appeared on their door. But this one was different. Printed. Folded cleanly. You proved it. Not just with the game. With the way you carried yourselves. Respect. No name. No signature. Isaiah read it 3 times, then slid it into his duffel bag. Malik raised an eyebrow. You keeping that one too? Yeah, Isaiah said. Not for now. For when we forget how hard it was. The finals were set for Sunday morning, against Zachary Lee and Mira Patel, both fast, both precise, both favorites to win. But the brackets didn't matter now, because for the first time since arriving, the Thompsons didn't feel like they had to prove they belonged. They were already doing it point by point, step by step, and tomorrow they'd finish it. Sunday morning arrived with an eerie calm. The sky over Cedar Pines was overcast, soft and gray, the kind of light that made everything feel still. The air was cool, unusual for July in North Carolina, but nobody mentioned the weather. Everyone had their eyes on the court. Court 1 had been marked for the championship match. Folding chairs were lined neatly along the fence, parents in polo shirts and visors settling in early, with paper coffee cups and crossed arms. A few campers stood off to the side, some whispering, others just waiting. Malik and Isaiah arrived first. Same black duffel, same shoes they'd worn all week, same quiet, steady walk. They didn't look like they were heading into a final. They looked like they were heading into a regular morning drill. But the look in their eyes, focused, calm, deliberate, said otherwise. Zachary Lee and Mira Patel arrived 10 minutes later. They were sharp. Mira wore a sleek white visor and matching wristbands. Zachary's warm-up jacket still had the fold lines from the pro shop. They laughed with their coach on the way in. They weren't underestimating the Thompsons, but they hadn't faced them either. Not yet. Coach Reddick stood near the umpire's chair. his clipboard gone, hands tucked into the pockets of his windbreaker. Best of 3 sets, the camp director called out. Standard USTA scoring. Let's keep it clean. Good luck to both teams. They all nodded. Only Isaiah said yes, ma'am. First serve went to Malik. He bounced the ball 3 times, stared straight ahead, then sent it slicing wide. Mira reached, caught it clean, but Isaiah was already moving. He caught it midair and angled it just beyond Zachary's reach. 15, love. No one clapped yet. They were still holding their breath. Zachary and Mira played hard. Mira's reflexes were razor sharp at the net, and Zachary's serve was nothing short of punishing. But the Thompsons weren't there to match power. They played like water flowing, adjusting, breaking rhythm. They won the first 2 games with soft angles, deep rallies, and a refusal to rush. Zachary shouted after a missed backhand. Mira smacked her thigh with her racket after netting a return. By the 4th game, the murmurs started again. They don't miss someone, whispered. They're always in position. That's not luck. That's training. But not everyone was impressed. On the far side, Brennan Aldridge stood with his arms folded watching. Savannah was nowhere to be seen. Midway through the set, Mira landed a perfect drop shot that forced Malik to sprint from the baseline. He barely got a racket under it and popped it up. Zachary charged in, ready to smash it home. But Isaiah was already moving, sliding across the court like he'd rehearsed it 1,000 times. He caught the shot just as it bounced and flicked it low past Mira's open side. Point. Crowd gasped. 5-3. They closed the set, 6-4. Quiet. Clean. As they switched sides, Mira took off her visor and wiped her forehead. Zachary bent over with his hands on his knees. The second set began with a different tempo. Mira and Zachary came out swinging aggressive fast, trying to force errors. And for a few games it worked. Malik double faulted once. Isaiah overshot a lob. Suddenly the score was 2-1 against them, but they didn't panic. During the changeover, Malik looked at Isaiah and said, "They're playing loud." Isaiah smiled faintly. "Then let's go quiet." They slowed everything down, held longer between serves, extended rallies, dropped in soft volleys when the others expected heat. By 3-3, the momentum had flipped. On one critical point, Zachary smashed a forehand to the back corner, only for Malik to chase it down and send a looping topspin shot that clipped the back line. The crowd erupted. Even Coach Reddick clenched his fists just once. By 5-4, the Thompsons were serving for the championship. Isaiah bounced the ball slowly, his face unreadable. He served wide. Mira returned low. Malik caught it and pushed it back deep. Zachary lunged, missed. 15-love. Next point, another rally. Mira tried a sharp angle. Isaiah saw it coming, stepped in, countered. 30-love. Then came a moment. Zachary hit a hard return straight at Isaiah. Not illegal, but deliberate. Isaiah blocked it, but the ball ricocheted off his racket and spun out. He didn't flinch, just handed the ball back to Malik. Malik nodded once. Serve, rally. Another shot from Mira, another return from Isaiah. 40-love, championship point. The air was still. Even the birds had gone quiet. Malik tossed the ball, served hard down the middle. Mira lunged, hit the net. Game, set, match. There was silence, then applause. Real applause. Not polite, not forced. Campers clapped. Parents stood. Even the camp director smiled. Malik and Isaiah didn't jump. They walked to the net, shook hands. Mira said quietly, "You earned that." Zachary nodded. "Hell of a match." As the Thompsons packed up their gear, Coach Reddick walked over. He didn't speak right away, just looked at them. Then finally he said, "If you ever think about nationals, call me." Malik raised an eyebrow. "You serious? I don't waste words." They nodded, not as players looking for validation, but as young men who had been waiting for someone to finally see what they saw in themselves. Back at the dorms, they dropped their bag on the floor and sat on the steps outside. Their shirts were damp, their hands were sore, but neither one looked tired. "You think Pop's off work yet?" Isaiah asked. Malik checked his phone. "Probably. You want to call, let him hear it on the live stream." They laughed, quiet, easy, and that's when Savannah Aldridge appeared. She stood a few feet away, arms crossed, mouth tight. "I didn't think you'd win," she said flatly. Isaiah didn't move. "We knew." She glanced at the court, then back at them. "You played clean." You say that like it's surprising, Malik replied. I guess I didn't expect to lose to people who didn't care what anyone thought. Malik looked at her for a long moment. That's why you did. She didn't respond, just turned and walked away. Coach Reddick stepped out from around the corner, heard the whole thing. He didn't say a word, just nodded once and left them sitting in the sunlight, the courts behind them, quiet for the first time all week. Their father's truck pulled into the Cedar Pines lot just after 3:00 p.m. It looked exactly the same as the day it arrived, sun-faded paint, a dent on the rear bumper, a crack in the passenger mirror, held together by tape. Anthony Thompson stepped out wearing the same work boots and the same loose-collared shirt from 2 weeks earlier, but his eyes had changed. He didn't need to ask how it went. The way Malik and Isaiah stood by the flagpole, arms crossed over their racket bags, shoulders squared, not tense, just sure, told him everything. You boys ready to head home, he asked, the way he might have asked if they were ready to eat. Malik nodded. Isaiah climbed into the back seat. They didn't talk about the match. They didn't talk about the trophy or the applause or the silence that followed it. The camp faded behind them in the rearview mirror. The gates shut with a soft metallic groan, the same sound they'd made when the Thompsons had first arrived. Only now they sounded different, like they were closing behind someone who left more than footprints on the court. They drove in silence for a while, just the hum of the road and the wind coming through the cracked window. Then Anthony cleared his throat. I watched the live stream, he said. Neither of the boys replied. You didn't just win. You taught them something. Malik looked out the window. Didn't feel like we were teaching. Anthony smiled at the road. That's the best kind of lesson. Isaiah leaned forward from the back seat. They never thought we'd make it to the finals. They probably still don't know how you did. We didn't talk. We didn't brag. We just played. And that, their father said, is why they'll remember it longer. They stopped at a gas station near the state line. Not for gas, they had enough, but for snacks. Isaiah grabbed a bottle of water and a bag of sour gummy worms. Malik went for a turkey sandwich and a banana. Anthony paid with cash and tossed a pack of peanuts into the cart for good measure. At the register, the cashier looked at their shirts. You boys from Cedar Pines, he asked. Isaiah nodded. Just finished the summer tournament. The man raised his eyebrows. Big-time camp. Y'all win anything. Malik cracked a rare smile. Just a few matches. The man laughed, rang them up, and waved as they left. It was a small moment, barely a blink in the day, but it felt like the world was catching up piece by piece. Back on the road, Anthony reached behind his seat and pulled out a folded sheet of paper. Forgot to give you this. It came in the mail last week. Isaiah took it, unfolded it, and stared at the letterhead USTA Regional Development Program, Baton Rouge Division. He passed it to Malik, who read it silently, then handed it back. Anthony kept driving. You don't have to decide anything now. Just know the door's open. Malik looked at his brother, then back out the window. Feels like we're just getting started. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the pines and the truck turned down a cracked road leading to their neighborhood, the boys spotted the familiar outline of their home. Faded siding, 2 front steps, a netless hoop nailed above the garage, and the court they trained on for years, a rectangle chalked onto the concrete with lines that never stayed straight. Malik unzipped the bag, pulled out his racket, and stepped onto the driveway. You really gonna hit tonight? Isaiah asked. Malik shrugged. Why not? Isaiah joined him. No drills, no structure, just hitting, back and forth, a rhythm that didn't need words. Anthony stood on the porch, arms crossed, eyes following every swing. After a while, the porch light flicked on behind him, casting long shadows over the court. The ball bounced once more, then rolled into the bushes. Neither boy moved to retrieve it. They were done for the day, but not finished. There's something powerful about quiet confidence, about showing up in spaces that were never designed for you and refusing to shrink. Malik and Isaiah didn't scream for attention. They didn't boast or break down when people doubted them. They showed up with a single bag, worn sneakers, and everything their father had taught them about grit, about discipline, and about letting the game speak for itself. And the game did speak. Not just in wins, but in the way they carried themselves, in the moments they didn't react, in the points they played with purpose instead of pride. We don't always get to choose the world we walk into, but we do choose how we walk through it. And sometimes walking through with quiet dignity can make more noise than shouting ever could. So if you're out there feeling underestimated, if you've been overlooked, dismissed, or boxed in, remember this: you don't need their permission to be great. You just need the courage to keep showing up. Because when preparation meets poise and effort meets endurance, respect has no choice but to follow. And that's justice in its truest form.